The Ideal God and the True God. A Charles Fillmore article. There is but one foundation, one starting point, for all questions dealing with man and his existence as a self-conscious being. That point is necessarily first cause, God. The nature of this first cause and the relations which it bears to man have been matters of contention in all ages. The fact is that no two men in existence get exactly the same concept of God. We may each be taught from childhood to old age that God is a being having certain universal characteristics, and we may build an ideal creator in mind from that description, but it will differ from that of another, just as we each differ in our individualities. Keen observers in summing up the religions of the races of history have found that the God concept is invariably a reflection of dominant race traits. If the dominant traits of the Hebrew race could have been reflected with a stereoscope against the sky, just such a picture would have appeared as is described in the Old Testament as Jehovah. It is good food for thought to remember that there is no record of God ever having revealed himself except through some individual, and when the history of that individual is carefully considered, it will be found that the God, of which he is the mouthpiece, exhibits traits of character corresponding remarkably with his own. The Hebrews were nomadic shepherds, and originally, their highest idea of worship was the worship of their ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, until Moses introduced them to Jehovah, the unseen God. But Jehovah was not considered the universal creator of all, but merely a race deity, whose power was superior to the gods of the other nations with whom the Hebrews came in contact. Elijah pitted Jehovah against Baal, a neighboring god, and Jehovah at his command roasted the beef, and licked up the 400 prophets with the dispatch of a modern cyclone. It will be observed that the God who did all this was very like Elijah, and that Elijah himself often would in his silent meditation question the work of his Jehovah. Then the Father, the still small voice within the silent depths of his own soul, poured into his consciousness the universal spirit of truth, and he saw that he had been invoking a man-made God. It is very important to know that man does make all things that rule over him, or that he imagines rule over him, the external God included. Hence, in adopting the ruling deity of some other nation, he should be very careful to see that it is fully up to his standard in morals, magnanimity, and intelligence, for he is apt to put himself in subjection to a power that will prove an impediment to his progress. This is exemplified in a startling manner in the Anglo-Saxon race. It borrowed Jehovah from the Hebrews. Now Jehovah sanctioned slavery, war, the subjugation of woman to man, judicial murder, an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. Of course, the race has long ago outgrown these barbaric errors, but as it adopted the Hebrew Jehovah as its political, moral, and religious director, it is proving very slow work getting from under his dominion. That an honest God is the noblest work of man is too true to be quoted in jest, for in no other department of his almighty creative power does man so plainly show his inherent characteristics. But we are not here to talk about the gods of other races or other men, nor to discuss those ideal beings which the 1,000 sects of the Christian world have adopted from other nations, inherited from the Church Fathers, or built up in imagination themselves. We are here to find out the one true Father principle that works in and through all the immanent love and wisdom of being. If we were looking for the highest God idea that has ever been presented, we should choose that of Jesus Christ. His idea of God was that of a universal Father who dearly loves all his children and is more anxious to pour out blessings upon them than they are to receive. His concept of this loving Father was that concept which comes to all who seek him in spirit and not in form. It was too broad to be confined to personality or limited to place. He said, "He who hath seen me hath seen the Father, and where I am there you may be also." This could only mean that God is an invisible and all-pervading principle that manifested through him and would manifest through all. He said, "The kingdom of God is within you, and if the kingdom is within you, the king must also be there enthroned." If there is one thing more than another that stands out prominently in the teachings of Jesus Christ, it is that God is not an external personality ruling over man, but a universal principle expressing himself through man. This is also the teachings of this doctrine. It is universally admitted that God is spirit and the source of all life, love, intelligence, and that in the exercise of these attributes he is omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent. God is not a spirit, as erroneously translated in the King James Version, but spirit, that which is not limited to time, space, nor personality. Words do not convey the delicate shades of meaning which the mind conceives, and the word spirit does not now express the correct God idea, for the reason that it is used to represent a state of existence having form, that is, a state of attenuated materiality. This is not the character of the Father principle, and none of those ideal localities described as spheres of blessedness or as heavenly cities with God on a throne should be confounded with the principle of being. They are all symbols which may or may not exist or stand out in form as a result of mental imaging. The Father, which we are seeking, is here present in his wholeness, and we each have his kingdom in our inner consciousness. Jesus said unto the woman, "The hour cometh, and now is when the true worshippers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth, for the Father seeks such to worship him. God is spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth." Now, how are we to understand the character of this Father who is spirit, and how are we to worship him in spirit and in truth? To worship spirit, there must be something in the worshipper which corresponds to that spirit, and Jesus takes for granted that man has both the spirit and the truth necessary to its proper understanding. No one has yet undertaken to make fine lines of distinction in classifying spirit, and we are safe in asserting that there is but one spirit. If man has a spirit, it must be of the same character as the Father's spirit, and therefore interblended with his spirit. Now, if there is but one universal spirit, the man's spirit and Father's spirit are the same. It needs only the truth, or understanding quality of mind, to bring them into unity. In all man's concepts of God, he never fails to see him as the supreme good. He constantly reaches out and strives for the good and knows that if he were God, he would be first, last, and always wholly good. When man describes his concept of good, he says it is love, life, intelligence, justice, harmony, freedom, a combination of qualities that go to make up his ideal of an existence that will give him the greatest happiness, the greatest good. A careful analysis of these qualities will show them to be spiritual. Love does not occupy space, nor can it be described in dimensions, hence it must in essence be a spiritual quality, and if spiritual it must blend with and be identical with God. John says, God is love. If you are in heart sending out a feeling of love to all creatures, you have touched the mind of God and are thinking his universal thoughts. You may not be a professed worshiper of God, nor know him as pictured in the Apostles' Creed. Yet if you love truly unselfishly and have no narrow range in the object upon which you center that love, you have found God. If you are manifesting life, you are in touch with God, for God is life and the source of all. If you are manifesting intelligence, you are putting forth the thoughts of mind, and there is but one mind universal, and you cannot get outside of it. If you are free in your mental action and not bound by beliefs of time, space, form, matter, or personality, you are touching the inner consciousness of God, mind. You are then free indeed, and the God mind has become to you a great sea of light that flashes before you every moment some new and more beautiful ideal. The point to be emphasized is that God is not a person removed out of your spiritual sight and to be seen only through some mediator, nor even a principle, if by that term is understood a being that lacks my quality possible to identity. God is Almighty Spirit, all-present, all-wise, and all-active to those who so recognize him in consciousness. This is they who worship him in spirit and in truth. They acknowledge the omnipresence of this Father principle in spirit, and at the same time worship him in truth by understanding that this principle is not subject to change nor open to argument, but an exact and immutable principle of being lying back of all existence as cause, and approachable only along lines of perfect law. We must get rid of the idea that God punishes man in any way, or that he has made saints of some and withheld his grace from others, or that he will accede to our wishes and change laws in order to accommodate us, or that we are unjustly used because our poverty or sickness has not been removed after much beseeching. The whole order of our thinking must in this respect be reversed. God is more willing to give than we are to receive, and has actually placed every desire right at our hand, waiting for us to get into the proper mental attitude to have them fulfilled. For God is not matter, nor do his gifts consist of things made. God is spirit, and they who receive his gifts do so in spirit, and through the spiritual wisdom and understanding which is poured into the consciousness, they create through mental action the fulfillment. The father principle in man, its manifest side, are so closely related, and the connection between them is so intimate that they cannot be treated intelligently as distinct things. You cannot describe a mathematical problem or imagine it separate from the principle of mathematics. Man is just as intimately associated with the father principle as is the problem with its principle. Where the problem is, there also must be the principle, for from the principle must originate all that appears in the problem. If the problem has departed from the relations inherent in principle, just to the extent of that departure has it removed itself beyond the active support of the principle. So, man draws his every quality from the father principle, whose parallel of accuracy is goodness, harmony, and satisfaction, in all with which it has to do. Now, if man is not getting harmony and satisfaction in his life problem, it is evidence that he is not in proper touch with the father principle. Through his inherent quality of freedom, he has in consciousness strayed away from exact expression of principle. If any of you are in this mental state, you are not therefore under condemnation of the Father. You are simply exercising inherent qualities of freedom and doing just what is your privilege to do. Neither is the Father to blame for your condition. You are children of the King and have all the rights of a sovereign. One inalienable right is the freedom to do as you wish. The Father is free, and you could not be in his image and likeness without having a like quality. This is strikingly illustrated in the parable of the prodigal son. You took your share of the Father's estate, life, love, intelligence, freedom, and went in consciousness to a far country. You separated yourself from an intimate spiritual association with the Father, and thereby lost his wisdom in your affairs. If you are in the far country eating husks and are ready to return, the Father's house is always open to you. You do not have to travel to find that house. It is the center of your consciousness, and is made manifest to you by mental processes alone. No man hath seen God at any time, and he who hath seen me hath seen the Father, are apparent paradoxes, but both true. One loots out upon the external visibility and says, "Where's your God? I have never seen him," and the natural scientist delves more deeply into the study of flora and fauna, acknowledges the great design and intelligence there manifested, but says he fails to discover anything beyond natural law. But when the inner perception sees an absolute good expressed, it says, "Thou art the Christ," etc. Thus it is always. They who study the without are always searching for God, but never find him. Those who look within sense his loving presence and exclaim, "My Lord and my God," yet a gulf always exists between these two mental attitudes, because one looks to cause and the other to effect. God is cause, is spirit, and can never be known by a study of the things which appear. They are but the formulations of man's ideas of himself and God. God makes man, and man creates all forms and states of externality. God is the self-existent wisdom and substance. Man is the wisdom substance idealized in innumerable self-conscious centers, each of which is potentially God. Man is thus a potential center in infinite wisdom and substance, which we sum up in the one word, mind. So it follows that the real man as wisdom and substance does not occupy space, is not in time, and has none of the limitations of the environment in which we now seem to be cast. He is and always remains free and independent of all form and expression, yet he is that from which they all originate. Man is the point of differentiation into form and expression of all the potentialities of God, and their appearance in details is his work. In the pure God-mind, all ideals are in harmony and relations perfect, and man is the perfection of this one supreme mind made manifest. Yet freedom is inherent in the God-mind, and man as its image and likeness has perfect freedom also, and builds his universe in harmony with the ideals existing in God, and which he always reflects when he places himself in proper spiritual relations. Yet man, having all the prerogatives of God, can image forth his own ideals according to the wisdom which he has affirmed for himself, for there is but one law of expression, and that is through holding in mind certain images, and giving action and vitality to them by the will. In this simple law is summed up all the apparent mysteries of creation. We call it the power of thought, mind, and action. The very simplicity of this one mode of creation of all the myriad forms and conditions of existence is the principal cause of its being overlooked. We see the intricate combinations in the phenomenal universe and presume a mysteriously profound cause, which is therefore far beyond our comprehension and past finding out. Yet Darwin said that a single protoplasmic germ contained the possibilities of a universe. We find that all creation is according to one simple law, thinking. You are the lawmaker. God simply furnishes the material. But, exclaims the neophyte, do you mean to say that I can extricate myself from the myriad claims that bind me physically, mentally, and socially by the mere holding of certain thoughts? That is just what we claim and are demonstrating. If the law is based in principle, it will demonstrate, and we are so bold as to put it to the test right here and now. Many people think that they will be extricated from their undesirable conditions by a change of environment. Some look forward to it in this earth life through the acquirement of money or health, while others put it off until after so-called death. But few are bold enough to make a start at this day, at this hour, at this moment, and unravel the tangled ends of life. Yet we knew that if the fact is accepted that we are free agents, and that our own acts produce these results, it must follow logically that only through our own volition, begun at any time and under any circumstances, can we bring about the change. This is why we advocate an immediate beginning of thought discipline. We do not favor eloquent sermons or flowery language, if they in any way detract the attention of the individual from the work that he is to do from day to day in training his mental currents into the right channels. If another tells me about a certain desirable place, be his description never so beautiful, it will not be of permanent value unless he also tells me how to get there myself. Tint is one of the great drawbacks to a religion that has for its exponents an eloquent ministry. The followers have their ears tickled once a week, and they soar to heights of ideality one day, and forget all about it the other 6. We teach a doctrine of practical everyday value to everyone who follows its instructions. This doctrine shows you that you are your own minister, lawyer, and doctor, and that you have within yourself the storehouse from which you can supply every need. It is the ministry proclaimed in its original simplicity by Jesus Christ. It asks you to return again to the estate of simplicity in which you are as a little child, believing implicitly what the Father tells you from the innermost recesses of your own being. We have found this a good doctrine. It has opened to us a new world, and we see how through it shall be brought about the fulfillment of that promise. God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow, nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain. For the former things are passed away. End of article.